Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, we're back. Oh my God, I still have my voice. We're back after my longest ever professional break here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. That's still, should I be doing the pod until after, maybe I should wait until after Tennessee baseball season's done, because let me check my notes here. They're doing very well without the pod here, but they were also doing well before the pod. So whomst among us, who is to say that it's has anything to do with the Chase Thomas podcast? But who knows? But to jump back into all things Tennessee after weeks away, it's the man who might be pitching this weekend against Evansville. Tony Vitello has thrown it out before. It might be this weekend, it might not, but Ryan Schumpert might be called upon. Rocky Top Insider's on. Ryan Schumpert, superstar, getting name dropped by the skipper this past week, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. And, you know, it's funny to start on that point. I've long said Tony Vitello, to everyone obvious to know, fantastic baseball coach.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just as good at PR. We saw it when a Tennessee player was using a bat in Jordan Beck that I don't know if it was illegal. It did not have proper identification on it. And instead of everybody talking about how Tennessee was maybe using an illegal bat, he spun it into Mike Honcho in a Talladega Nights joke. And that was the whole story, you know, going forward. That's what everybody talked about. Incredible PR, as he's done many times. Great job by him, too. He sidesteps the question about who was going to pitch for him in the SEC championship game by saying that I was going to pitch for him. Not that anybody was going to care too much anyway. We knew there wasn't a whole lot left in the pin. But
would you take it up on it? Would you take him up on it? Like, would you go out and do it? Like, what do you think? Where are you hitting right now? If you had to guess, Ryan Schumpert, are you getting one across? Like, are you making it to Cannon Peebles? Are you making it Charlie Taylor? Do you have a preference on if you're called into the game? Who is your catcher of choice? Is it Cal? Do you go with Old Reliable?
Cal. Come on, now.
It's obviously. It has to be.
Come on now.
Okay.
Obviously, Cal. I'm right in with Cal. Cal's going to fire me up. Cal's going to give one of those. The guy's not even going to come close to swinging. And Cal's immediately going to try to defer to the first and third base umpire to say he tried to swing. But
so you want that? You want someone to pump you up. See, I'm going the other way. I want Cannon Peebles. I want you to calm me down because I'm already nervous. I want you to. I need to be. Cal's got a lot of energy. Cal is an extrovert. He's got a lot of fire to him. It's why Tony Vitello, I think, loves Cal Stark the most. It's just because I feel like they both are. They're kind of built the same way. They have that same kind of juice and that same kind of baseball competitiveness flowing through both of them. They just see baseball the same way, it seems like.
Yeah, no, I think there's some truth there. But Cal's also been great calming guys down, too. I mean, he's plug Ryan Schumpert's story over Rocky Top Insider on Cal Stark. And
shameless.
That's what a lot of the pitchers talked about is how pitchers with different personalities of Cal being able to adapt to them. And it's, as Josh E. Leonard told me in that story, it's why Cal, one of the main reasons Cal won the starting catcher job last year is that people, including Chase Dolan, there came to the staff and said, "I want Cal to catch when I'm pitching." So I trust Cal, and I'm going to need that trust. I don't think I want to pitch though. The lights would be far too bright for me in that moment.
I don't think I'm getting it over home plate. Like I think I'm going either far left or far right. I'm not going in the dirt close, but I am missing the catcher. I'm not hitting. I'm not. It's not going down the pike. It's a wild pitch, guaranteed.
Give Frank Anderson a couple weeks with you though. He'll be fine in that strike zone.
Work some magic.
That's true.
He can work some magic.
That voice you also hear of Always College Football and Rocky Top Insider, Omaha Productions' own Jack Foster. Jack, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. It was weird. I didn't really know what to do today. I did my normal job stuff. But there's
sounds like you knew what to do. You did your job today, Jack.
No, but there's no basketball on. Sure, there's college baseball, and you know LSU's on right now. I'm definitely keeping track of that as they're down to their final out. Jared Jones walks to stay alive here in the bottom of the 10th against UNC. But you know, there just wasn't a lot to do today. My roommates are gone. I'm basically living by myself. I feel like 40-year-old bachelor over here, just getting my Firehouse subs, eating by myself tonight, and just enjoying life, but also not really knowing what to do. So it's been an odd day, but a good day.
What's your Firehouse order? I haven't been to Firehouse subs in a long time. What's your Firehouse order?
Hook and ladder, no lettuce, no onion.
What is hook and ladder?
It is It's like a Dijon with turkey and ham, cheese, I think mozzarella. It's really good.
I'm not a ham guy.
I'm a big
ham
honey
belongs in the
mustard
trash.
Dijon
Ham
guy,
is the worst meat. Ham doesn't deserve I'm sorry to my grandmother who makes ham a lot for Christmas. If we could go ahead and get that out of here, I would go for it. Like, it's just, I'm not a ham guy. It's slimy. I don't like the texture. The honey baked ham line that I see in Knoxville every time I drive by near a holiday weekend or something, like in the fall, winter on Kingston Pike, there's a line out the building. People get there early to get their honey baked ham. I don't get it. I'm not a ham guy. And there's I don't know. I'm a big texture guy when it comes to food, and honey baked ham, ham's not my thing. Turkey all day though. Had salmon tonight. Could eat salmon every day.
Ugh.
Not a salmon guy?
Nah.
Ugh. Are you any fish? Tilapia?
Sushi.
Oh,
big sushi guy.
Oh, I can't do sushi. I don't like cold fish. That's
Tilapia is good. Flounder's good.
Never had flounder, I don't think. Catfish is good. I'll always eat
catfish. I can get down with it. Yeah, salmon, tuna, not for me.
Okay. I don't think I've ever had tuna either. Tuna's never been on the menu. And then Ryan Schumpert. Oh, that was the other thing, Ryan. Have you recovered, by the way? So, because it's basically we're checking back in here after 7 weeks away. There was another big thing we need to catch up on before we dive into actual Tennessee athletics. But you you go away from the pod, and you then immediately take it upon yourself to become a Twitter superstar by overindulgence of some hot dog eating contest.
I was trying to think of what he's talking about.
And I'm just following along, where I just saw it on someone else's thing. And I'm like, is that Ryan? And then it's like, oh, that's Ryan. What is he doing? And he's just, what was the impetus for going down this challenge? Or is it just like, hey, straight up, like, hey, those hot dogs look good. How many would you eat? Like, explain to me how this came about, and how are you feeling weeks removed from just a lot of Knoxville hot dogs?
Well, so I think the background knowledge you need to know is that Mike Wilson and Knox News Sentinel and Ben McKee of Go Vols 247, they like to pick on me a little bit, I guess you would say. That would be a good way of phrasing it. So, it's a midweek baseball game against Queens, and actually ended up being a relatively competitive game for a midweek game, but it's not particularly entertaining. And they're trying to, one of the things they joke about me a lot is how I'm emaciated and, don't eat anything. So they're trying to they're posturing hot dog eating challenges for me to possibly do. And, I'm kind of negotiating. Money is obviously the conversation here. And then we arrived on a deal that I'd already had one hot dog before the game too, but we arrived on a deal, and at the middle of the third inning, I'd eat 5 hot dogs between the middle of the third inning and 7th inning stretch. So 4 innings to eat 5 hot dogs. And these Lindsey Nelson Stadium dogs at this point, like, they're taken up to the press box before the game. After the first inning, they're terrible. The buns are stale. They're burnt, but also cold. Yeah. I mean, you don't even understand that combination of burnt and cold. It's awful. But I got it done with the last out. Made, I think, it was $100 was raised in the press box. And then Grant Ramey, once he heard about it, said, I'll throw in $20 more. So I made $120. So that was good. I threw up immediately. I threw up.
Did you actually throw up?
Yeah, immediately when I got done, I threw up. I got done, and then I went to the bathroom and I threw up, and then I threw up again later in the middle of the night when I woke up.
Oh,
and then I got we don't need to go into more details. And then it was about a 24-hour hangover. Essentially, is that's what it felt like. It felt like a hangover from the hot dogs.
Was it worth it, Ryan?
Well, here's what I would say. I think from the money,
$120 is pretty good for that. That's not bad.
Yeah, I think the money standpoint compared to the challenge, like, the money barely edged it out. It was probably worth it. Not crazy, but when you throw the content in, content's king, baby, and the content was great. So when you include all those things, then yes. And we're going on 10 minutes now. We haven't talked about anything, so I'll say one last thing on it. Very funny story. My precious 4-year-old niece, Kate, when I was down, my brother and his family live in Birmingham, so I was down there for the SEC tournament. And she, I guess, had heard about it, and she goes, Ryan, why did you eat all those hot dogs? And I said, for money. And then my sister-in-law had just a fantastic line in which she said to Kate, my niece, but Kate, remember, we do not do things to our body for money. Great parenting. Hilarious line.
Oh, man.
And then I said,
yes. Hilarious.
Do not take after your Uncle Ryan. He is not a very good influence in this situation.
See, Chase, him throwing up made it worthwhile, but I was actually pitching in for the thing.
Okay.
And I was kind of bitter. I'm not going to lie about the deal because I thought he should have had to done it in like 15 minutes.
Like a full-on hot dog competition where it's like, hey,
like
if Kobayashi and Chestnut, they have to do it right then. Like, we don't get to drag this out. You either all or nothing. I agree with you. I think 120 is more worthwhile if you have to.
He had like an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's a long time.
But the fact that it affected him like it did makes it worth it. And the hot dogs were very disgusting.
Well, it's also like he's throwing up. He's throwing up in the booth. Does it like while it's happening? If he does it the 15 minutes or you're out, Ryan's like puking all over the press box. Like he's not getting out of there. Like it's happening while the game's going on. And Ryan made how does that go? They're like, how do you explain that to the SID? Like, hey, my bad.
Oh, Sean pitched in money, I'm pretty sure. So
okay, well, there you go.
Sean was just in the thick of it. I reject this whole notion. If I had 15 minutes, I wouldn't have been able to eat 3 hot dogs. These things are terrible. It's a
mindset thing. You just attack it. You just attack the task and get it done.
It wouldn't have happened. I would not have been able to eat 3.
We need a redo. I want to see now, Jack. You're talking a big game here. We need to get Jack in here to see if he can do it in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I could. I don't want to, and I'd have to have more money, but I do
more money. What's your price? 120 is too low.
Yeah, it'd be
okay. So how many would it like? What's the fair amount in 15 minutes for you, hot dog wise?
For $100?
Yeah. For 120. How many would you have to eat that you think is fair?
I'd do 3.
3's not that bad. They're not that big.
I know, but like look,
you have no idea how.
I think the stakes should be high.
I
think the stakes should be high, and I also think like what I should have to eat should be high. Like, I want max on both. You know, I'm all or nothing type of person. So
see, y'all can do these things in your mid-20s, early 20s. My mid-30s, if I did something like that, I have to go to colonoscopy the next day. Like, we're gonna have to go. Doctor's appointment's happening, where it's like, hey.
Also, Ryan's dipping the bun in a Dr. Pepper too. So
that is gnarly. That is gnarly.
No, one time you did it in soda.
I did the hot dog in one dip. Look, I'm looking for answers. You know, I'm testing things out. I'm trying to see if it works.
That's not the answer.
It didn't work. Well, you're right. It wasn't the answer, Jack. But I wouldn't have known for sure if I didn't try. And I figured it out. It was, if I didn't have that water to dip you guys,
the water's fine.
Simply cannot comprehend how stale those buns were. You cannot comprehend it.
Not a sponsor. The concession stand at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Probably not.
Those hot dogs are good when they're fresh. They just, by that time have been sitting out for an hour and a half. So not very good at that point.
Well, that naturally brings us into what happened with Tennessee baseball this weekend. I don't have a natural transition there. That's just what we got to do. Jack, how did Tennessee baseball coast through the Knoxville Regional this weekend?
The depth of the bullpen was great. And by great, I'm really talking about Andrew Binke. He had a great outing there in their second game. And the big thing for me from Tennessee this weekend was the lineup past the top 3 was amazing. Specifically, the bottom of the lineup as the regional rounded out there on Sunday with Cal Stark and Dean Curley. Dean Curley all weekend, major development. One of the biggest of the weekend for me was Dean Curley's bat coming alive, leaving the yard twice in the regional after he hadn't homered since April 7th in the Auburn series. So him coming alive like that, Cal Stark providing some pop there in the 9-hole. And of course, I mean, the top 3 in batting average on the weekend were 4, 5, 6 in the lineup, Dreiling, Inslee, and Tier. So they ragged all weekend long. And then I think the Andrew Binke outing is something that was really huge for Tennessee this weekend and is very encouraging going forward.
Yeah, and it was something I wrote about it on Friday because 789 was not good on Friday night, where we were talking about it, and it was one of those where I was like, this, it's postseason play. Like 789's got to get better. The 789 crew, they got to figure something out. Because you're just going to have it like, because the way Tennessee's built is like one of the things as me being a Braves guy, the Braves are built the same way, where the Braves, like, they are just so home run heavy and home run dependent, and they're just a powerful team. They won a title being a home run dependent team. It's a good strategy. It's a good style of offense, it wins. It's just that's why Tennessee. One of the main reasons Tennessee has gone to 4 straight super regionals is because they're just powerful, and this kind of way of playing offense and this kind of team building strategy works. And Tony Vitello has built a juggernaut playing this kind of way. But there was something where it's like you saw if the bats go cold. I mean, especially in one third of the lineup, well, anything can happen. You're just a lot more susceptible because this is a team that's not going to steal a bunch of bases. They're not going to be Kentucky where if the bats they're not hitting things over the fence, that they're going to be able to win in different ways. The way they're able to win in different ways into the lineup is like they get contributors, like you said, Jack, which Dean Curley, 2 home runs on Saturday and Sunday. Cal Stark, 3 home runs over the weekend. Hunter Inslee in the middle of the order. He rakes. Dylan Dreiling continuing to be, I think, the most underrated Tennessee player all season long. Sure. All those different ways. Because, I mean, I think yesterday, Ryan, Christian Moore, Blake Burke, and Billy Amick were 1 for 13 combined on Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening.
1 for 13, yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I mean, they still scored 12 runs. Like it didn't even matter. Like I think that's one of the testaments, and that's something I wrote about it on TBL Tennessee this weekend, was that like they just it's amazing that we can nitpick so much with the number 1 team in the country, because you're like, well, I mean, I wish that the 79 or I wish the DH spot will get remedied, and you're like, man, so many teams would just kill to be in the spot that Tennessee's in, where they can score 12 runs with ease, and it felt like kind of a light night, and you did it without your top 3 hitters, all 2 first rounders, 1 borderline first rounder. They all have quiet weekends, and it doesn't matter. You still blow out teams back-to-back nights on Saturday and Sunday, and you didn't actually need big nights from the guys who you expect to carry you on most nights here come postseason.
Yeah, there's certainly an element of that. I don't think I ever felt like it was quiet in the middle of the game, but to me, it felt like one of Tennessee's best offensive weekends in a long time. The offense had been good. It just hadn't been great in a while. And
I'm saying like quiet spots. Like you have the 79 was quiet on Friday, and then you have the 1-2-3 that was quiet on Sunday. You have like different spots can have rough games, and it just doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's all true. And one thing I'll say too is that Tennessee kind of, I guess, to go hand in hand with the home run stuff. And when you talk about the baseball trends, they walked a ton this weekend. I felt like they had so many competitive at-bats throughout the weekend, even when stretches of the game maybe where they weren't fantastic at the plate. I mean, you talk about the 1-2-3, those guys, each of them walked 4 times this weekend. Kavaris Steers walked 7 times. And some of that certainly was facing some guys at the end of the bullpens by the time they got to Sunday, and certainly Indiana struggled to find the strike zone all weekend, no matter who they were playing. So it was, as Tony Vitello always says, it takes 2 to tango, but it just felt like a lot of competitive at bats from Tennessee and getting it done, and obviously a ton of home runs, but a lot of working walks as well. And like you said, the middle of the lineup was fantastic all weekend. And they got production from different spots across the lineup. I mean, Christian Moore, it felt like he had a quiet weekend, and he hit like 360 or something. It was still, with those 4 walks, was still really good.
308.
Yeah, 308 with 4 walks and a home run and another RBI in the Sunday game on a ground out. So the depth is, it's just good to see that those guys are allowed to have a bad game every once in a while. And to me, Dean Curley, as Jack said, big development. Cal, this kind of what Cal does. Cal's gonna have a weekend a couple times a year where he's in fuego. But it doesn't feel like he's going to sustain anything close to what he did from hitting 3 home runs and getting on base 50% of his at bats. Curley, it's like, all right, this guy's really talented. It felt like he'd hit a wall. If he can find a way to fight through it, I think that gives a whole nother punch to Tennessee's lineup, especially when you pair it with what Hunter Inslee's done at the plate for the last month now, which is arguably to be the best behind Christian Moore, probably been the best hitter on Tennessee's team.
I'd probably put him behind Dreiling too.
The last month?
I would still take Dreiling over last month. Has he hit better than Dreiling?
I mean, I haven't run Dreiling's. I haven't run Dreiling's numbers.
They're right there. And that's the other thing, is like they bat 4 and 5, and you're just like, you can't really, I mean, it's just been devastating for teams. Like it's just exhausting to get through Tennessee's lineup. Like it just has to be just exhausting. And Southern Miss is like, please stop putting us with Tennessee. Next year, they're like, get us out of here. We've had enough of Tennessee back-to-back years and what it's like and how hard it is to beat this team. Jack, your biggest surprise from this weekend's regional was what for Tennessee?
Oh, it's Andrew Binke against Indiana. Drew Beam, well, I thought was amazing in his first 2 innings against Indiana, but Tennessee's offense was having these half-hour innings, and maybe he got cold, who knows, but struggles with the command, only ends up pitching 3 2/3. But then Andrew Binke comes out and absolutely shoves for 3.1 innings, longest outing of his Tennessee career. Previous was, I believe, 2.2 innings in his first appearance this season against UNC Asheville. The 3 strikeouts, no runs allowed, 3 hits. Andrew Binke was, he looked like he could be one of Tennessee's top relievers the way he pitched against Indiana. And Indiana, maybe not the best lineup in the world, but definitely a solid one who have some dangerous hitters. So Andrew Binke doing that in a big moment, obviously it was a big game against Indiana. It's not like where in Hoover you can debate if those games are big or not. This was a big game, day 2 of the Knoxville Regional. And, Tony Vitello rode with him, and rightfully so, got the win on the night. So Andrew Binke pitching like that, if he can do that moving forward for Tennessee, I think all their pitching questions are really answered. If he can give you 3 1/3 on a weekend and be that dominant, I have zero worries about this pitching staff. And just that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, you look at, even Sunday, where you just, another thing we take for granted is just that, like, Xander and Nate had 0 earned runs the entire game. So they get 3 runs, but it was off some fluky, crazy errors and stuff like that. But, like, Xander was electric, and he gets back up off the mat, like, with that crazy hit to his leg, and you didn't know if he was going to be able to see it in the game. And Xander had maybe one of his best outings all season. And then Nate Snead, because, like, we notice if Nate Snead gets hit a little bit, you're like, whoa, what's going on? He's just been Tennessee's most reliable arm all season long, and he just goes in and does what Nate Snead needs to do. Like, obviously it didn't get to that point with Tennessee's offense that he was in any high leverage situations on Sunday, but, like, the bullpen and just the pitching as a whole is just rolling across the board. AJ Kazi, our guy, Jack, rolling again on Friday nights. You just look at it where, yeah, there was a little blip with Chris Damos not being able to get very far, but guess what? Didn't end up mattering. Like, Tennessee and Frank, I think you wrote about this, Ryan, was just that, like, this has been, I think, Frank Anderson's best season to date at Tennessee, is what he's been able to put together with all the craziness, all, like, the injuries to your top arm, AJ Russell, and not having him for the full year, and, like, having to move AJ Kazi around, having to move Xander around. Like, there's just what he's been able to do with this staff and with this bullpen, and especially with how much of the bullpen is now trust, like, you can trust. Like, you have trust in Andrew Binke now. You have trust, obviously, in Combs and what he's done down the stretch here. You have so many dudes. Kirby can, like, you just go up and down the list, like Marcus Phillips popping down the stretch, like Dylan Loy. He's coming out as a freshman. Like, it just, I think Frank Anderson, this has been just an unbelievable season for him. And I just don't think we can say enough good things about what he's been able to do. Because I think it's his most impressive season at Tennessee to date.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think it goes back to something that we have probably all said before a season, or back in August in the fall when the roster was set. It was like, this offense is going to be really, really good. Man, there's a lot of questions about the pitching. You trust Frank Anderson to figure him out. And I don't think I expected it to be this good. I expected him to be right back in the top 5 in team ERA again. But it's an incredible job. He's so valuable. He's the best pitching coach in the country. As I say, someone that's not smart enough to make that call, does not follow college baseball nationally enough, good enough to make that call. But it's hard for me to fathom anyone being better. And I think one of the things that stands out this past weekend, and Chase, you kind of alluded to it, it wasn't all roses this weekend for this group. Mm-hmm. It felt like, and granted, they only played 3 games in a regional, so it wasn't totally pushed, but it felt like in a regional format, which they saw in the SEC tournament, if they make it to the College World Series, they'll see again in the first half. It felt like the depth maybe there wasn't quite enough depth, that if someone failed to get them the certain number of outs that they've been getting them, things could get dicey. Chris Damos gets 1 out. AJ Kazi completely picks him up. Drew Beam, who, say what you want about Drew Beam, he's certainly not dominant, but you feel pretty darn good he's going to get you 15 outs every single time he goes out there. He doesn't get a ton of outs, and Andrew Binke picks him up. So for them to be able to gloss over a lot of that stuff, I thought was really impressive. And it's Binke, Loy, and Phillips who have been those guys on the outside looking in. And I think Loy and Phillips don't have great outings when they come in on Saturday, but even as a whole, if you combined all their stat lines, you would say, yeah, you would take that from them over the course of the weekend, whatever it ended up being, 3 2/3 outs and 2 runs or 1 or 2 earned runs they gave up. And while I don't feel like, to what Jack was saying, I don't feel comfortable or confident saying Andrew Binky's going to be able to give you that consistently. It feels like one of those guys is going to be able to step up and get some meaningful outs for you each weekend, and kind of ease some of the concerns that you have about the pitching depth. That one of those guys will be able to step up and eat some outs, if not multiple guys, and not necessarily having to be heroes, but just getting an inning, getting a 2 innings, and giving up a run, and just kind of keeping Tennessee in the fight between some of the starting pitching, which bridging some of the starting pitching to some of that elite relief pitching that they have.
I have a quick word on Frank real quick. Just back to what we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like last year was Tony Vitello's best coaching job at Tennessee because he did a fantastic job of managing the talent he had. They were preseason number 2, very talented team, wasn't working. He figured out a way to make it work, to solve the puzzle. This year, you don't think Tennessee has a ton of talent on the pitching staff. Frank Anderson develops that talent. He almost creates it. And so it's a little bit different of how it was done. But I think last year was Tony Vitello's best coaching job. And then this year is Frank Anderson's best coaching job. And barring pretty much a miracle this weekend, both teams are going to make Omaha. So I just think that's, something important to recognize.
I like that point. I think that's true. Ryan, how would you approach DH going forward? So we saw Dalton Bargo get opportunities this weekend. We saw Reese Chapman. What do you think is in store for this weekend? Do you think it's still a mixture of those two? Do we see somebody else get involved? Do we get Robin Villeneuve back against Evansville? Because because it's not an SEC, like he was raking prior to SEC hitting. Like, does he get back in the fold? Does Cannon get a shot? I don't know. Does Tony experiment a lot more here at the DH spot this weekend because you got the number 64 team coming to Knoxville for the Supers this weekend?
I don't think he experiments at all, to be honest. More than he has, I think. To me, Chapman's the guy that I still trust the most right now. I feel like Cannon should get a few more opportunities. It feels like they don't want to start Cannon that much. I guess they did it one time. I guess the SEC championship game, they started him at DH. It feels like they don't want to, just from a catching standpoint. But if you're going to have Charlie Taylor active, like, why is he active if he can't be the backup catcher in a game that you want to start Cannon at DH against the lefties? So those are kind of the two guys I'd roll with. Maybe Bargo gets some opportunities. I think it's going to be pretty par for the course for what it's been. I don't expand it a ton. If it's me, I'm not giving Robin Villeneuve or Colby Backus or Bracky Lowry at bats. I'm sticking with those 3 guys that I mentioned. But, it's certainly Tony's kind of given a lot of guys opportunities, and I don't think he's going to change anything of how he's handled the DH spot or any other spot on this team any differently this weekend.
Do you share that sentiment, Jack?
Yeah, mostly. I do think if it was all neutral and there wasn't any worry about not having that depth at the catcher position in a given game, I would roll with Cannon. But I just think he's had great at-bats the last month and a half. I think he's been a different guy at the plate than he was earlier in the season. Yeah, he's not just, ripping the cover off the ball when he gets up there and it's like you have to play him. It's not like that, but he is providing something every time he steps into the box, whereas Reese Chapman can have some, ugly games like he did on Saturday against Indiana. I believe it was over 5 with 4 strikeouts and a couple of them on 3 pitches. So I think Reese Chapman should get the, first opportunity on a given weekend. When you're starting a tournament or a super regional, give Reese Chapman the first opportunity. And then if he struggles, I would personally go Cannon. Like Ryan said, if Charlie Taylor's going to be active, it makes sense. And I also get Cannon Peebles, pinch hitting for Cal Stark late in a big moment because of the offensive advantage. But you can't really argue at this point that Cannon's that much better than Cal offensively. Cal Stark can work a walk as good as anyone on the team, and he gets hit by pitches somehow more than anyone on the team, and he has power. So, yeah, he's not as good of a hitter, but he still has power. So I would go Cannon, but to me it's Reese and Cannon, and then Bargo a little bit after that, a little bit bigger gap.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'll bet that it's Reese twice, and then you know what? I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna say it's Reese Friday, Rob Saturday, and Bargo on Sunday. I think you're going to get all three.
What does Robin Villeneuve start do for anybody? Like,
I mean, confidence. Like, what if he rakes? What if he
confidence is not? I mean, it's probably part of the problem. Thinking it's gonna flip.
You might as well start Colby Backus because you have a smaller sample size, so there's still a little bit more of an unknown. And their numbers, I mean, they both have struck out a ton comparative to their at-bats against SEC pitching. You might as well go Colby at that point. Like, I don't know why Robin ever sees any meaningful playing time again this season.
We shall see. Final thing here on Tennessee baseball going into this regional weekend. This was something that I was thinking about with the draft and everything coming up. Ryan, when you look at who stays and who goes from this lineup, I thought this would be a fun exercise. Who is back and who is gone with Wyatt Evans entering the portal today? This is something we have to think about. I don't expect a mass exodus. There's been like stuff about Tennessee's not gonna have a problem bringing in guys for positions of need and stuff like that out of the portal. But I am curious from what you've heard, your reporting and covering the team and like draft slots and all that. Who do you expect back, and who should Tennessee fans not expect back from this year's team?
Just as a whole?
As a whole. Like, let's go down the list. Left field.
Dreiling, gone.
Is he, like, over 100%? Does it matter where he gets drafted, or is he just 100% gone?
He's top
where
5
he's
round
going
pick,
to get drafted. Yeah, where he's going to get drafted, it doesn't matter. He's gone.
Okay. Center
Inslee,
field.
I think Inslee's probably back. That would be my guess. I think Tiers is definitely gone. I think Blake Burke at first is definitely gone. I think Christian Moore at second is definitely gone. Dean Curley's obviously back.
Okay.
I think Billy is definitely gone. And then obviously Cal is gone. I think Cannon will be back, would be my guess. So that's of the starters. I guess there's nobody on the bench that's gonna go pro. I guess I'd say Chapman is a guy I think will definitely be a starter for them next year. I think Bargo will definitely be a starter for them somewhere next year. I think Robin will be in the hunt. I think Ariel will definitely be a starter at shortstop next year.
Do you think Dean goes to second or third?
I think third probably, but depending on how stuff unfolds with the portal, I think, there's obviously options there of where he's very versatile. So, you can see him multiple spots, but I think third's most likely. The pitching staff to me is where there's more questions. I think Beam is almost certainly gone. Obviously, Xander and Kirby are gone. Trying to think if there are any other seniors that are definitively gone. But I think that's it. Causey to me feels like the big
Isn't Combs out of eligibility?
No, Combs has another year of eligibility.
Oh, so Combs can't come back.
I would figure Combs goes to the draft.
Oh,
yeah, I think
Combs
and Causey to me are the two biggest fringe guys for the draft on the entire team. I would guess both those guys, if you made me say over under 50%, I would say over 50%. But I think there's possibility.
In my experience, the past couple of years covering the team, it's felt like if you're on the fence, especially with a pitcher, probably should bank on them going to the big.
You just never know. You might be in an AJ Russell situation. Like, you just don't. Like, you just can't risk it, especially if you had a good year. And AJ's obviously been dynamite, and Combs has been dynamite. Like, you just don't. You want to go off on a high note, right? Like, you want to get drafted. Like, their value's got to be pretty high.
I don't see what those guys are going to do to raise their value. Combs is a bullpen.
Yeah, because I don't think AJ's going to
come back and be. Yeah, I mean, I think AJ could start. I think that's a possibility. But is him starting doing? I mean, he's basically a starter now.
That's true.
Is him starting going to do a ton to raise his stock? And then Combs to me is a bullpen guy, so I don't think he's going to do a ton to raise his stock. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the gist of it. Nate Snead's back.
He's a starter.
Who knows
next
what? Yes, who knows what the situation will be with
He's
AJ
probably like
Russell.
A Friday guy.
Yeah, depending on what the deal is with AJ Russell. AJ Russell will obviously be on the team. We'll see what the health situation is.
I mean, AJ Russell is just like that's just a question mark. You just have to put a giant question mark on AJ Russell because it's just impossible to forecast right now of what next year looks like for him.
Yep, exactly. I think all three of those guys, the fringe guys we talked about, will have big roles on the pitching staff next year. Phillips, Binky, and Loy. So that's kind of
Matthew Dallas too.
Yeah, to me, he's the big X factor. To me, he's the X factor. I think ideally he turns himself into a guy. The talent's there. Obviously, it hasn't all clicked this year. But yeah, to me,
they have starters. They might have a situation, Jack, where they might have too many starters. Like you look around and you're like, it's going to be some fierce competition for those 3 spots next year.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if Russell's healthy. But obviously Tennessee's going to get guys in the portal, and I'm assuming they'll probably get an infielder. That feels like it'll be the biggest need, whether it's a really good first baseman or a second baseman, because I think you want Ariel and Dean on the left side of the infield. That just makes a lot of sense. So then the right side of the infield's a little bit of a question. Robin could play first, but it feels like Bargo would be an outfielder at this point, along with Reese. Second base question mark, put Laurie in there for now. Of the guys on the team, Ryan, right now, who would be your third outfielder if Chapman and Bargo are 2 of them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to even think through the entire roster.
Well, it's got to be Inslee, right?
I mean, I think Inslee.
Inslee's back. My bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. There's your 3 with Robin / Laurie at second, and then Ariel and Dean short and third.
And one thing I'll add to Jack what you just said, because I think what you said is right about wanting Curley and Ariel on the left side. I just think there's typically more high-level third baseman available in the portal from a hitting standpoint than you're going to find with second baseman. So there's probably a higher ceiling for what you could get at that spot. So,
but you might not need that.
I think that's worth watching. Yeah, maybe not. Heck, maybe Bargo is the third.
Yeah, I was about to say you could also get a outfielder with a great bat and put Bargo at third, Dean at second,
or Bargo at second.
I feel better about Bargo at third base than I do defensively. I feel better about Bargo at third base than I do him playing in the outfield.
And then Curley at second, and then just get a big time outfielder in the portal.
Yeah, exactly. They have. I mean, that's the good thing with a lot of these guys that they brought in last year, whether it be in a freshman class or in the portal. There's just a lot of those guys are very versatile. So they should have some flexibility in how they handle that. Stamos is the other guy that's gone. That's still one other pitcher we didn't hit, but he's out of eligibility, so he's gone as well.
That's a lot of turnover, but I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I feel like Tennessee will probably go after corner infield and outfield as far as position players go, because, I mean, I think it'd be nice if you went into next season and Robin's your DH and not your starting first baseman, based off what he showed you this year. I mean, he can obviously take a big step, and we saw him break early in the season, but it feels like if you got a really big corner infielder and good outfielder, that would be optimal.
Well, the thing that's they're just operating, and this is a testament to what Vitello's built, is like they're operating from a position of strength, where I think Tony, because he rotates so much and he's just not shy about just playing the best players and playing guys who are hitting, playing guys who are pitching well, like he has no qualms. Like it is a full on, like, are you performing at an elite level? Because our expectations are to be the best team in college baseball year over year. Like you recruit at that level, you play at that level. You've gone to 4 straight supers now. That, like, I don't think they have to just be like, well, we have to make sure we develop and we bring these guys in. Now it's their turn. It's like, nope, I'm going to bring in competition. And I hope I would like for you to win this job, or I don't really care. Like, it's just whoever is in here to get us close to the ultimate goal of winning a College World Series. That's who I'm going to play. And that's what we're going to do. So I think the competition, you saw it this year, like the amount of competition, you see it at DH, you see it all over the place, is that like there is a bunch of competition for opportunities on this team. That only, I think, helps things, because these guys just know there's always someone looking over their shoulder. Not that like in a negative way, but just like the nature of the beast is they want to play for the best team in the country. So I just think there's such a strong appetite that Tennessee can go into this from a position of strength of like, yeah, we like our guys, but that doesn't mean we're not going to try and maximize our window and maximize what we can do here. Like, I'm still going to bring in guys to compete with the guys that I like. And I think a lot of programs around the country just don't have that luxury of being able to do both. And I think Tennessee is one of the few that can right now.
Yeah. And one other thing I think to add that's important to this conversation is this is the best incoming recruiting class they've had under Tony. And with that means that this is the chance potentially the worst are going to get hit in the MLB draft from a recruiting class standpoint. So we'll see how all that unfolds. But, it's a really, really good class. And, there's certainly going to be some freshmen that if things break well for them, that, we'll be in the thick of all these competitions as well in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. Switching gears here a little bit, Chaz Lanier happened while we were away as well. Something that I'm thinking about, and I'm going to probably write about it tomorrow, is Bama versus Tennessee now, because Bama could be preseason number 1. They get Mark Sears back. They get a lot of guys back. They obviously did really well in the portal with the Rutgers big, and Nate Oates obviously has a style that has had a lot of success. If you look at the 2 best programs in the SEC over the last few years, it has been Alabama and Tennessee. Alabama ultimately gets to the Final Four. Tennessee gets to the Elite 8 this past cycle. Bart Torvik, though, still likes Tennessee's lineup and potential contributors more than Alabama. So, Ryan Schumpert, what say you in this regard? Do you lean more towards Bama being the better roster and what you've seen from Sears and company, or do you think with Lanier and with Dubar, with Igor, and with everybody coming back for Tennessee that Bart Torvik might be onto something? The numbers are probably more right than what national media folks are seeing with Alabama versus Tennessee. Because I think there is a big split here in what the numbers might bear out versus what national folks think the SEC might ultimately play out as.
Yeah, I think there's very little chance I'm not discombobulated going through all this, because in my head, I'm with the national media members. To me, not that it's a massive gap, but I do think Alabama's roster is definitely better. I mean, I think Kansas is the one roster I'd say in the entire country that's better than Alabama. But I obviously have, I'm one of the people that thinks that the analytics, to Bart Torvik, to KenPom, like those are usually the guys to trust, and those guys get it right a whole lot more than your average way too early top 25 does from Jeff Goodman or whoever. So I think that's interesting. And I guess it's 2 things when I look at the analytics. One that makes sense to me and one that confuses me. I think Alabama, they were good analytically all last year, but the defense was such a concern that, I think they did some things to address that concern, especially with Clifford from Rutgers. He's one of the best. I think you talk about these 2 teams, and I think there were 6 players that blocked 80 shots in college basketball last year. Tennessee got 1 in the portal and Felix Okpara, and then Alabama got 1 with Clifford. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, the guy from Rutgers. The Big Red Dog is what I'm going to be calling him. So does the defense really get a lot better? I mean, I think that's a big piece, but to me, a lot of the questions you have about Alabama's defense last year, Grant Nelson, Mark Sears, the guys that they brought in the portal that you like besides Clifford, a lot of defensive questions. So that part to me, I guess I understand why Alabama's a little bit lower on the analytics, because you're always going to have those teams that make a run into the Final Four. They're always going to be higher on the way too early than the analytics are going to have them. What surprised me about Tennessee when it comes to the analytics is I think they're 2nd or 3rd defense and like 63rd or something offensively, which I feel like Tennessee's going to be definitely better than 63rd offensively. I don't think they're maybe not going to be as good as they were last year, but it surprises me that Tennessee, it surprises me that Tennessee is so high on Bart Torvik, considering how low their offense is still rated. Because if Tennessee's offense is the 63rd best in February, according to KenPom and Bart Torvik and all those sites, I feel pretty confident Alabama is going to be a definitively better team.
Which is just, I don't see that. That's a huge drop. Like Tennessee's offense was an elite this past. Where did they finish with KenPom? What were they on offense ultimately?
25 to 30.
I was going to say 20th. I didn't know if it was
late 20s, early 30s, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at who won. I mean, UConn's obviously top 10 in both, and you want to if you want to ultimately win a title, you need to be top 10 in both. I mean, Tennessee's going to have a top 10 defense. That much is certain next year. But this maybe goes into the next question, Ryan. Like, it's interesting that they're down on the offense, because I think shooting's going to be better across the board. I think obviously there's a drop off from Dalton Connect and what he is when he gets hot. But I think the shooting as a whole is going to be better. I think Dubar, Igor, Sakai, just across the board, I think it's going to be, obviously Chaz Lanier and what he's going to bring. Jordan Gainey, I think, will be better, and he'll shoot. I don't see how, he really struggled making the adjustment from USC Upstate to Tennessee this year, shooting wise, but we know he can shoot. We've seen at that level that he can shoot the ball, and I think he'll shoot the ball better next year as well. And I don't know, you just look around, I just feel like Tennessee just has so many shooters. Cam Carr, obviously a guy who will be fearless shooting threes. I think he's going to shoot the ball. I just feel like there's just so many more shooters on next year's team than what we saw this year. You had the ultimate flamethrower offensive weapon in Dalton, but I think there's way more variety on this year's team. And you still have someone who lit it up in a similar way to Dalton Northern Colorado that he did at University of North Florida in Chaz Lanier. So I don't know. Like I would be like something went horribly wrong to me if Tennessee is anywhere outside of at worst the 30s offensively. Something went like their bad injuries are the only thing that I think to me would lead to Tennessee not having a top 30 offense at the very worst.
Top 30 or top 40?
Top 30.
See,
the shooting's just too much. Dramatic. Like the shooting's good. Like they should be able to shoot lights out from three. Like this should be a very good shooting team.
I just looked it up. They were 28th last year offensively. You're saying you'd be very surprised if they take any step back, which to me, I
mean, that's my question. I think this roster is better than last year's. Like Santi didn't shoot the ball well. Like Josiah was in and out. You had Tobey and Jonas in a lot of those minutes. You had, Jordan Gainey obviously did not shoot the ball well last year. I don't know. I just feel like
I think the shooting's better. Better. Dalton Connect was the best perimeter player in the entire country. Yeah. So there's a big drop off there. And I think the crux of this whole question of the offense, because the shooting is going to be better. You're going to have elite point guard play again. Felix Okpara, I think, is going to be able to score at the rim. He's not going to be a guy you throw the ball into, but I think finish at the rim well. It's what Chaz Lanier can be as a shot creator for himself. That's the question. Because to me, that is the question on the roster. Is there a guard that can create their own shot at a high level? Because Sakai, as much as I really like him, that's not at 5'9" or whatever he is. He's not going to be able to do that at a super high level. And as much as I like the other transfer portal gets they got in Darlinstone Dubar and Igor Milicic, I'm skeptical, especially Dubar, about what they're going to be able to do when it comes to creating their own shot. So who is going to be the guy that can go out, get to the basket, score in the mid-range?
It should be Chaz. Like that's what that's why you kept the spot. Like that's what you. It should be Chaz.
It should be, yeah. And I think he'll be able to do that. But Chaz Lanier can be good and can score 14, 15 points a game and make a good transition. And he's not going to be 75% of offense production that Dalton Connect is. That's just such a big drop off. And again, that's where I don't see 63. I would be very surprised if it's 63. I don't think the drop off is going to be close to that big. But when you're talking about something went terribly wrong, if they're not in the top 30, that's literally if the offense isn't just as good, something went terribly wrong. I wouldn't go that far.
I just don't think that Jack, when you look at the difference, the disparity between the two. I guess it's just I'm very optimistic about the overall influx of talent to combat the loss of Dalton Connect. Like if it was just a 1-for-1 Dalton for Chaz from last year's team, I think I could see that kind of drop off offensively. But I think Igor's going to be really good. I think Dubar is going to be really, really good. Even if they're not creating their own shot as much as you want, I'm really in on the shooting that Tennessee will be able to do as a whole. And if Chaz Lanier is even 80% offensively of what Dalton Connect was last year, I just feel like the offense should be relatively close to where they were a year ago. I think something went really wrong if they're not somewhere around where they were last year. When you consider what Chaz should be bringing coming in from North Florida and how high they were coming in to this offseason. Obviously he was a huge priority for Tennessee, that I think it should be expected that he's a big part of this. Like it's fair for Tennessee fans not to be like, oh, we're going to have Dalton Connect 2.0, but like to have high expectations for Chaz should be the expectation. Is you should have high expectations for Chaz Lanier to be a big time player and one of the best players in the SEC next year. And if that's the case, that's why I'd be surprised with the guys around him and everything else. It's like Tennessee's offense should be really good.
No, I think you make a lot of sense. And, it's crazy how much they were able to replenish. And, Tennessee's kind of a portal team almost at this point, considering how many starters they're going to have in portal out of the portal next season. But, I think you look at the other players they lost and maybe you point to Santi and Joe. Well, those guys weren't really consistent offensive contributors last year, especially Santiago Vescovi. So, it's really DK, and he obviously had the ability to just take games over better than anyone in the SEC. That's why he won SEC Player of the Year. But, it's just, I think why it's easy to say that Tennessee's offense isn't going to be as good is because it's an unknown commodity. There's so much unknown with.
Well, it's a lot of turnover, right? You're betting on a lot of people to work together, right?
Right. what their starters are going to be next year. There's so much unknown because you haven't seen them in a Tennessee uniform yet. But I'll ask you guys, do you think their big men will be better offensively next year?
I'm glad you asked that because no, I don't think so.
Well, what is the rotation? Are we saying the rotation is JP, Akpara, Dubar, and Igor at the 4?
I think
As the
it's
backup 4?
I think Igor and Dubar will be the two guys that play the majority of the minutes at the 4.
Okay, then yes, I think they'll be better if that's the case offensively. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're considering the 4 spot too, I'm not
Yes.
considering the 4 spot as big men because Tennessee has not played big men at the 4 spot. They didn't play it last year, and
True.
Igor Milicic and Darlinson Dubar are wing players, in my opinion. Obviously,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if we're going 4-5, then I think yes. If we're going strictly 5, no.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and I don't think either way it's going to be a massive difference.
Yeah,
like I don't think just the 5. Tennessee was going to get way less production this year offensively than they did last year. And I think if you include both, I don't think this coming year they'll get way more than they did last year. But I would.
I mean, Estrella might start too. Estrella
might
might make a big jump. Like Estrella, I don't know. Like it may.
Estrella can make a big jump. I'd be surprised if he starts.
Well, I think it's going to be like if Jemai starts, then I think you might need to lean towards Estrella starting. Like I do wonder with the Akpara and Jemai, who I mean, obviously I'm the biggest Jemai guy on this podcast, but I do think, and when we talk about the offense and what you ultimately want to be in that top 30 range of where you were a year ago, these are things you have to consider is what's the best 5 to make sure our offense is as good as it can be, and we don't have any of those long time lulls. And how you start games, like I don't know if you start with Akpara and Jemai. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that's how he started, but I also wouldn't. I don't know. I think it's something to not put in stone this summer.
Yeah, and my first thought is definitely to put it into stone. And I won't reject it. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't think that's just a crazy thought. Where I would kind of disagree or maybe push back is like I don't think Tennessee's going to be starting games unless he just makes an unbelievable jump into an all SEC level big man. The first 4 minutes of the game, the offensive game plan is not going to be throw the ball to JP Estrella, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Maybe he does make that jump, and he's a guy that can score 13 points a game and be an all SEC guy. But I don't see that. And given that, if you take that away, because JP Estrella is definitively a better back to the basket scorer than Felix Akpara is, you take that away, I don't think there's a big gap in what they can do offensively. I mean, Akpara is a great athlete, and neither of them at this point can shoot the ball very well from more than 10 feet away from the basket. So I think certainly the offensive ceiling right now is clearly a lot higher for JP Estrella, but I don't think the floors are all that different in what the baseline of what each one can give you on the offensive end.
Final thing here, Jack Foster. ESPN's FPI loves the Vols football roster here going into next year. They're in the top 10 going into next year, post-transfer portal and everything else. When you start thinking about Tennessee and the 2024 roster, and like we kind of know now, by and large, injuries, I mean, like hopefully this is the vast majority of like the starters that we think and the guys who are in the building, like we have a good idea of who's who and who's going to be starting, who's going to be in the 2 deep, that sort of thing. Does this feel like a top 10 roster to you, or do you think the computers might be overrating Tennessee just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a heavy question because, you just have to kind of take into account all of college football, really. If you're ranking and you're putting Tennessee in the top 10 of the nation, when it comes down to it, I think games are won along the line of scrimmage and with elite playmaking at wide receiver and quarterback. And, if Tennessee's wide receiver core can obviously stay healthy, as it's struggled to do definitely last year, and Brazel's a dude, then it'll be among the best in the SEC, if not the nation. And if Nico is as advertised and can be a Heisman contender, obviously he can be among the best quarterbacks in the nation. And then you look at the line of scrimmage, I think the offensive line will be better. And then they potentially have top 3 overall pick James Pierce coming off the edge and a solid interior. So I think you can make the argument it's top 10. I would probably, just asking and not doing a whole ton of research about the top 30 teams in the nation and really making a list, I would probably say no, but just by default. But they have the upside to be 100%, and they have a lot of talent. So,
Ryan, do you share Jack's sentiment there?
Yeah, no, I think I'm in a similar boat to what Jack is, and I would simplify it even further. It's a pretty simple question about Nico. How good's Nico going to be? Because to me, if you take out the quarterback position and you don't look at quarterback position, I do not think Tennessee has a top 10 roster. But quarterback position is the most important position in sports by so much, and I think Nico is. It's hard to say what he's going to be, but I think he's capable of being really, really good and being one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I think he can elevate it to that. And Jack's right. The receiver position to me is a big question mark too, because again, there's a lot of bodies there. Still, I think I probably have more questions about that position than most do, just from what the production level has looked like.
You're totally right, but the upside's there. Last year, we were huge Dante Thornton guys. So, maybe he can figure it out.
Well, hold on. On this podcast, I said that I'm a year 2 believer in the guy jumps. Like, I'm all in on Dante this year. Like, I am all in on year 2 Dante Thornton. Like, everyone's throwing Chris Brazzell out. Chris Brazzell's 2025, y'all. I'm like 2025. Circle back with me. I'm ready to ride the green wave of Chris Brazzell here in orange and white. This year, though, Dante's like it's just he's forgotten, and I'm like, no, Dante, and he has more of like the downfield stuff that I think it's going to happen. Like, my gut just tells me Nico and Dante are going to be really good together. Dante was putting it all together before the ankle injury down the stretch last year. Like, that Mizzou catch was big time. He was really good in the Kentucky game. My gut tells me Dante is actually going to be really good. And I think Chris Brazzell is going to be good eventually too for Tennessee. But until I see, like, Javonte Payton, I guess, was a year 1. I mean, Velus Jones in the slot, he was solid year 1, just immediately coming over. But everyone in the slot, just about flourishes in Heupel's scheme. But I don't know. I just look at it when I think top 10 offense or top 10 roster. The thing I look at is y'all are focusing on the quarterback, which I think is interesting. I mean, I think the offensive line, if they're healthy, is one of the best in the sport. Like, I think if Lance Hurd is exactly what you need him to be, like Lance Hurd and John Campbell, those are some 2 linchpin tackles. If they are healthy and Lance Hurd lives up to the 5-star billing, I think they're going to be really good. Cooper's obviously great when he's healthy. We know we have in Spraggs. I think he'll be fine. Like, Tennessee has shown, whether it's Karich, whether it's Lampley, whoever, if it's Shamumarov, like, they have options. I think they'll be fine at left guard. Wide receiver, people are overthinking that. I'm like, Tennessee's gonna be fine with wide receiver. Like, if Nico is who, like,
they're gonna be fine. Yes, they're gonna be fine.
No, someone's gonna be great. Just fine. Someone's gonna be a star. Tennessee's going to have a star receiver this year. If Nico is even 90%, 80% of what we think he can be, Tennessee, the offense just can't be high. It just can't. You know what I mean? Like, they both have to happen. Like, you can't have an elite Nico Iamaleava and also not a gigantic season from at least one of these Tennessee receivers. One of these guys has to break out with Nico. Like, it's just, I don't see having one without the other.
I think Dante is probably the most likely to be this.
Yeah.
And they'd have to use Squirrel differently to have him be this, but I think he has potential to.
I love Squirrel. I just don't think it's going to be Squirrel.
But Tennessee needs a guy Tennessee needs a guy to replace Jalen Wright's explosiveness in their offense. Like, Jalen Wright had too many. What?
I muted Ryan. Keep going, Jack.
Oh, okay, gotcha. No, but they need a guy to replace Jalen Wright's explosiveness. They need a guy who can just break a game open, can get the chunk plays.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it, there's no guy that you just automatically point to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Dante. Like, I think Dante's that guy this year.
Chase, you're right. If Nico's going to be elite, one of those guys is going to break out. Yeah, that's 100% accurate.
That's what I'm saying, and I just think people are like way too scared to just like throw it because I think it's because there's just options. Like, Tennessee's never had this many options, so nobody wants to be wrong, and everyone is just like couching. Well, like, it could be Chris, it could be Squirrel, it could be Brew, it could be Caleb Webb, it could be.
They haven't had this many options to where no one's a star.
Yeah, but I don't like the stuff where they're
but
like.
I would. For me, it's the fact that. And I could be way wrong about this, and obviously I think Nico is going to be better than Joe Milton was last year, but I do not think Joe Milton was the only problem in Tennessee's passing game last year. I do not think the receiver play was very good. So that's my point. That's why I think that, or why I'm concerned about that. It's not that there's so many options. It's that none of those guys last year were.
Well, Brew wasn't a problem, and then Brew goes down.
Yeah, the problem with the receiving core was Dante didn't do what he was supposed to. Like, he didn't, take the bull by the horns like we thought he was going to off the jump. Brew got hurt, and Keaton hands were bricks last year. Like, that was the problem. Keaton's gone, Brew's healthy. Dante could take a step. That is and you have Brazel. So there's a lot, and Squirrel's a consistent factor.
Yeah, someone's breaking out. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you folks. Like, someone's going to have a superstar year. Like, someone out wide is
100% going to be better. How much better, we'll see. If it can be a top 5 to 10 in the nation, I don't know, but it's definitely going to be better.
If Tennessee's top 10 in scoring again, guess what? One of the receivers is having a Heisman type year too, because like you're seeing that same.
Let's
no, hold on. What I'm saying is like when Bryce Young won the Heisman, Nico is going to be in the Heisman conversation. Like Nico is going
to having a Heisman. You said a receiver.
No, what I am saying is like you saw with Bryce the year Bryce wins it, right? And you saw it with Mac Jones at that point, right? Where you've seen situations where the offense, the quarterback is electric. And guess what? Someone's going to be catching these passes. Someone's going to be like, well, how much of it is Nico and how much of it is do we deserve? Are we not counting Dante's value breaking out just as much as Nico? Like what I'm saying is like, if Nico is a Heisman finalist, that means one of these receivers is having a crazy stat season. And
wait, nobody's disagreeing with that. This is the essence of the Chase Thomas podcast. It's exactly what just happened when we're talking about Tennessee basketball's offense. I'm with Chase. I agree with Chase, and then he says something so asinine, like that one of Tennessee's receivers is going to be in the Heisman conversation, and then I have to fight back against that, and then I feel like I'm just defending a point I don't even really agree with because I just have to push back. I just have to push back against. Like I think Tennessee's offense is going to be good next year. Basketball. I think it's going to be a top 10 team again. I just had to get that out there because I felt like it's being too negative during Tennessee basketball portion.
You really were. You were hating really hard. Really hard. Jack and I are.
But
I mean,
yeah, no, I agree.
Sides. Many are saying.
I agree generally with your point. I think my question is more if the receiving core keeps Nico from being a star. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's the case. But to me, that's the question more. But yeah, if Nico has a great year, one of these receivers is certainly going to as well.
I don't think the receiving core is going to hold down Nico, but it's not going to elevate him, whereas obviously Nico can elevate this receiving core to become really, really good.
That's a great way of putting it. Yep, that's a great way.
But the receiving core is not elevating Nico, whereas in the past, Bama receivers would make Joe Blow under center look like a star.
Yeah, they look Mac Jones, like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and everybody. Like they elevated, but I think it's just
at Ohio State,
right? But I think it's like Michael Penix last year with, Heisman guy, and then you have Troy Franklin and Bo Nix, that connection. I can see something like that with Nico and Dante Thornton this year, where they both have just preposterous offensive seasons, and one's obviously they're going to get quarterbacks obviously in the Heisman conversation, but the numbers are following somebody. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you folks, the numbers are following somebody. Nico's going to have a great year, and someone else in the receiver room is going to have a statistical fantastic season with him. And
Ethan Davis, 1,000-yard season incoming.
I love Ethan Davis. I just don't think the Titans are going to get the ball that much.
No,
he's not going to be able to get to 1,000. I also
saying Chase is a big Squirrel White guy to go. That's like saying Chase is a big Cal Star guy. Like, come on now.
Wait, I haven't heard your beef with Squirrel White.
I don't have beef with Squirrel White. I think he's fine.
You just diminished him a lot last year.
No, I'm just saying he's fine.
He's not a game breaker.
That's what I'm saying. He's not like Squirrel White is consistent. I mean, he had a crazy bonkers catch that I will love forever, and I'm glad it happened like right in front of me. My dad in the South Carolina game. Like Squirrel is real. Squirrel is solid. Squirrel's just not like he's not he's not Jalen. He's not a speed. Like he's not even Velas.
By the end of September, when Mike Matthews has one game with more than 3 catches or 50 yards, Chase will be talking about how Mike Matthews has to play more snaps at this slot than Squirrel White. That's a guarantee. Yeah, exactly.
Parkview forever. He went to my high school. Like, we're all in. Like, you already know. Like, Mike Matthews, the hype train is just like, oh.
Can we bring Cody Brown back if we're going to talk hype up the Parkview guys just because we're from Parkview? Is that the guy?
Hating hard. 7 weeks away.
Hold on. All right. Let me look up something.
7 weeks away.
Oh,
and
man.
Just the hate is hard here. No, Mike Matthews is going to be good too. Braylon Staley?
Probably will.
I think he has more, like what I've seen from Braylon Staley. I'm very excited about seeing him in the slot. Squirrel is solid. Like, he is solid. I just don't think he's a game breaker. I don't think he's someone who's going in the second round after this year. Like, Squirrel I like. He's solid.
Who led Tennessee in catches last year?
Squirrel.
By 32.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's pretty crazy.
A lot of screens.
35. All right. So Ramel Keaton had 35 catches last year, and you know what role he had. What's the over-under on
drops?
Yeah. What's the over-under on Mike Matthews catches this year?
24.5.
Wait, what did Jalen have his freshman year?
Yeah, well, stand by.
His freshman year or his first year under Heupel?
First year under Heupel.
21.
Yeah, first year under Heupel.
Peyton and Tillman were he had 21.
Okay. I'll say over under 20. I'll say Mike has 28. I'll say he has 28. I think he has more than Jalen that year.
That's pretty high.
I think Mike's going to play.
So you think he's third in the pecking order?
Well, I think it depends on
fourth in the pecking order.
Well, it depends on which side. Like, because Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod factor into this too. So, like, it depends on where he slides. Like, is he directly behind Dante?
When push comes to shove an SEC play, Tennessee's not running 5-6 deep wide receiver.
I don't know. They have the guys.
I don't think it's happening. They had to use Webb and Nimrod out of necessity.
Well, I think they're going to at least start that way because they're going to figure out who their guys are. Like, I think you're going to see the rotation early.
Against Chat, sure, but
I think it might be longer than that.
will be a really good gauge of how they're going to play their cards.
I don't know. I can't believe I'm the only person high on Tennessee's roster and offense going into next year. It's unbelievable.
Only one.
Like, I'm the only one. Me against the world. Me against the world.
That's a good point, Chase.
Chase is like Mike Matthews, 40 catches, Khalifa Keith, 10 rushing touchdowns.
That's a great thing. Like, Khalifa Keith, Jabari was the touchdown vulture 2 years ago, right? Like, what did Jabari have touchdown wise when he would get up
double
to the
digits?
Yeah, Jabari. I could see Khalifa Keith moving into that role eventually.
22. Jabari had 13 rushing touchdowns to.
I love that.
10.
Yeah, no, that could be Khalifa Keith's role. There you go.
38 passing touchdowns that year, and just 23 rushing touchdowns from their top two backs. That offense was so scary.
Wait. Breaking news as of 2 minutes ago. Dante Thornton tweeted one.
Oh, gosh.
He what?
He tweeted the number one.
This isn't a live feed, right? He just knows. Like, he knows. I'm all about it. Dante Thornton.
The enemy speaks. If he had tweeted, the enemy speaks kindly but holds a knife. I would have been full Chase Thomas all in. And I actually, fully circling back, Chase, I am with you. If you told me I had to pick one of Dante and Chris Brazel, I would go with Dante as well.
And I think Chris is getting all that. I think Chris will be good. I just think it's next year. I just really think there's something about year two in this offense and just what it takes to learn and to gain the trust of the staff and this and the. I don't know. My gut tells me year two for Dante is going to be big, and I think he's the first Tennessee receiver taken in the draft next year. That'll be my guess, but we shall see. Brian Schumpert, what can the folks check out from you over at Rocky Top Insider this week?
Yeah, tons of Tennessee baseball stuff, getting ready for the Super Regionals and all of their Tennessee football, Tennessee basketball stuff that pops up. Should have a kind of a roster breakdown of what I think the rotations and the starters and all that good stuff's going to look like for basketball sometime this week. But for the most part, a lot of Tennessee baseball.
There you go. What about you, Jack Foster over at Always College Football, Rocky Top Insider as well?
Yeah, for Always College Football, just, off-season talk. Greg talking about teams he's high on. We've had some coaches on, Mike Gundy, Cristobal's coming up. So, there's always a trend in the summer. Greg likes to get coaches on the show of teams he's high on this year. So if he gets a coach on the show, chances are he likes that team this year. And then with the Rocky Top Insider, obviously another weekend at Lindsey Nelson Stadium coming up. Live update thread every single game. RockyTopInsider.com. Everything you need to know as the Purple Aces roll into town. Going to be a
great nickname,
exhilarating weekend on Rocky Top.
I love it. Ryan Schumpert, Jack Foster, always a pleasure. And I'll talk to y'all next week.